Hey guys, we're in Pennsylvania across the street from the Academy of Fine Arts. We're going to get out there for a ride test later, but I thought this would be a nice environment to cover some of the specs on the Schwinn Monroe 350. A little bit quieter in here and potentially drier. This is not a bike that comes with fenders, but it is outfitted with some mounting points here, some bosses, so you could potentially add some of your own later. I've also reviewed the Monroe 250. The big difference is this 350 watt motor versus 250 watt. This bike is $300 more at $1,499. Still what I would consider to be a value priced electric bike. It's in that $1,500 range. They're selling these predominantly online. It sounds like Amazon and maybe some other websites. So there could be some assembly required. I can't really speak to that. I'm just here at the expo, test riding some bikes and reviewing on the fly. But the good news is this is all set up. It's riding pretty well. I love that, this is a purpose-built electric bike. You can tell because they've got these motor inhibitors built in on the brake levers, so it's going to stop the motor. And a lot of those cables are internally routed. Also, the battery pack is mounted at 3 points here, not just 2. So it's a little bit more secure, and that's good. This is a 5.7 pound battery pack. And then the motor, I'm estimating about 6.5 pounds, maybe just a little bit heavier than the 250 watt. So again, this thing weighs about 45.5 pounds, which I would consider to be relatively lightweight in the world of e-bikes. 50 pounds is where a lot of other bikes land, but some of them have fenders and racks and stuff, so it kind of makes sense. You're getting the higher power, the higher capacity battery pack, 36 volt, 14 amp hours instead of 11.6 amp hours. So you're going to go a little bit further, maybe. And I say maybe because that is a higher power motor. It's going to use more of that energy. So there's a lot of trade-offs to consider. Is it worth the $300 extra for this bike? Well, you do get like three pounds heavier. The 250 only weighs 42.3 pounds. So it's, the 3 extra pounds versus the range versus helping you climb. I would say if you're a larger rider or someone who wants a zippier feel, then yeah, maybe this is worth going with. And it's kind of this gloss blue and black versus black and red on the Monroe 250. So, both bikes relatively lightweight, very simple. This is a single speed drivetrain. See, there's a 46 tooth sprocket in the front, chain ring rather. And then we've got an 18 tooth sprocket in the rear. Exact same setup. We got this horizontal sliding dropout and then this extra little plate. It's configured a little bit different than the Monroe 250. You can see this cap must have gotten bumped. Maybe the bike tipped over at some point. You can just fit this back over. That is one of the points of vulnerability on hub motor powered electric bikes, right? You've got this cable sticking out the side that could get bent or snagged. And this cap, there we go. I think I just about got it. It's pretty tight. It's pretty tucked in. This is not much different from, some of the other, especially from 8Fun hub motors. Dapu has a power cable that goes right here between the dropout and the disc brake, and it tucks in. It's a little bit more clean. It's a little bit better protected. People talk about servicing bikes like this. You might have to flip it over a little bit to do some work. If you're going to lay it down, laying it on the left-hand side would be a little bit more sturdy because you don't have to worry about a derailleur or whatever. Well, this bike doesn't have a derailleur, but it does have that cable and that little cap and stuff. So it's just something I think about this. This one also has a plastic chain cover. And the other bike, the Monroe 250 that I reviewed, it did not. And so maybe it broke and it fell off. Perhaps both of these come with the chain cover, but it's something I think about, especially when you're riding with long pants like I am here today. You don't want to get these snagged up and greasy. 170 millimeter cranks, aluminum alloy. We've got these generic, but pretty great aluminum alloy platform pedals. The frame is aluminum alloy. The seat post aluminum alloy, 27.2 millimeters in diameter, so you could get a suspension post, which would be definitely on my mind if I was getting this. You can see this is a longer stem right here. It's about 100 millimeters, and you can flip it to make it more aggressive, and you can remove some of these spacers, so you can turn this into like a road bike type of feel. It's definitely like a city bike, right? It's simple, it's tough because it's only single speed, efficient with these relatively narrow tires. These are 700 by 35C. You do have that reflective sidewall stripe for safety, and that deep dish design, which is cool, maybe a little bit aerodynamic, and just tough, right? The spokes are going to be a little bit shorter. That can make the ride a little bit stiffer. I don't know. There's all these different trade-offs, but I did notice that it's 14 gauge up front, 13 gauge in the rear, so a little bit thicker spokes in the rear as well. just kind of neat. Definitely back to being purpose-built and fairly well designed. You've got that extra force going on with that 350 watt internally geared hub motor that is Bafang. I don't know exactly how many newton meters of torque it's putting out, but it's a hub motor. So what you end up with is kind of a zippy feel, a little bit rear heavy, not too bad. I weighed the bike from this center point and it didn't tip forward or backwards. It weighed pretty central. And part of that's because the battery pack is forward. And I like that they've got some graphics and stuff. Coming up here to the front, we've got a mechanical 160 millimeter disc brake. Generic levers, but they do have a rubberized edge. They remind me of Tektro levers, and they have that motor inhibitor. So when we were talking about how hub motors work, they tend to feel kind of a smooth ramping feel. You can't shift gears like you can with a mid-drive to empower them for climbing. And if you're trying to climb a hill like you start from zero, you're going to be really slogging it out with this thing, especially on a single speed. Because I think it's most comfortable around 15 miles per hour. 0 to 10 is like kind of, you're kind of working, and you hope the motor helps you. 350 watts help you a little bit more than 250 watts. Just something to think about. This doesn't have a torque sensor. It's got a cadence sensor down here. So this is sort of a tried and true, but a little bit less sophisticated. There's just these 12 magnets, and they pass a little sensor. And as they do, the sensor says, oh, we're moving, go. And it sends a signal to the controller, gives the motor some power based on whatever level of assist you're in. And it works okay, but then you stop pedaling. It takes a little bit longer for the system to realize that. It's like, oh, I'm not hearing anything, stop, and there's a little bit of lag. So coming back up to these, motor inhibitors built into both brake levers, anytime you pull those, it just sends an immediate signal, like, stop the motor, we're not moving anymore, we need to stop. It's kind of an emergency cutoff, something that's neat to see, especially as you get a little bit more power in that motor. I'd call 350 watts average, especially in the United States. The battery pack is above average in terms of capacity, but it's 36 volt. We're not talking 48 volt. I don't know how many amps the controller is putting, and that's really the bigger question. It's not just the voltage, it's the amps. We'll get out there and ride, and in my experience, comparing this to other bikes, it's a relatively quiet system. It's kind of the standard, right? You see Bafang or 8Fun all over the place. A Chinese company, relatively affordable, and you can see that the cockpit up here is super clean because they've gone with the super simplified LED control panel. Before I get to that, we were talking about the battery before. You can charge this on or off the frame, and the key unlocks it, and it actually tips out the side. I might try to show that. We do have the key right here. Wish me luck, though. I don't want to tip the bike over. So we insert it, twist it, and then you can see the battery tips out to the side. So it's very nice. Let's see. Even got a little handle built into the top. It's not a loop like the Bosch pack that resembles this, so you do want to be careful with this thing. You don't want to drop it. Again, 5.7 pounds, 36 volts, 14 amp hours. There's a little charging port on the right hand side, and then it's got that LED capacity readout here, so you could kind of tell if this was off the bike, like, oh, do I need to charge it up? And you could store that in a cool, dry location rather than on the bike, maybe down at a bike rack. So if you commuted to work, you could take the battery off, take it with you, and then the bike's going to be pretty tough and safe at the parking garage. Or you could store the bike in your garage where it gets super hot in the summer or super cold, take the battery somewhere else where it's going to be a little bit just less stressful on those cells. Lithium-ion cells, they should last pretty well. Again, 2-year comprehensive warranty from Schwinn on this bike. They do have some dealers with their electric bikes, maybe not as many as some others, and this does seem to be a direct sale type of electric bike. So coming back to assembly and service, you might be a little bit more on your own. And then the charger, it's a 2 amp, so kind of average, pretty lightweight though. It's like 1.5 pounds. And then this is what the plug looks like. It's just some pins, it's plastic. It's very generic, which is fine. Again, I think they're trying to save cost here so that you don't have to pay as much. You get a bike that's electric, gives you some assist, but keep in mind that depending on what level of assist you're in, you're not going to get quite as much range and efficiency as a mid-drive. So this is like kind of old school technology, Cadence Sensor, simple hub motor. I just think that the battery is the big upgrade here because of where it's mounted, how it's mounted securely, and then the higher capacity. So that's a win for sure. And come up here to the cockpit, hold the power button for a couple seconds, and then you can see those lights going up and down. We've got pretty much a full battery. That's what we saw down there too, a little LED readout. And then 5 assist levels. We can take it all the way down to no assist, which is fine. You just ride this bike around like a regular bike. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do most of my ride tests in 5 so you can hear the motor and get some sense of power. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of hills to work with today, but we should be able to get up to the 20 mile per hour and just get some idea. I do like the, disc brakes a little bit more than rim brakes. It makes the rims nicer. You got that black sidewall instead of a silver machine sidewall, black spokes, black hub motor. It's a nice looking bike, and it does come in 3 sizes. I'm on the medium here, and back at the side I estimated like 19, 21, 23. Now I measured the large just a bit ago with the Monroe 250, and it was 23 inches here for the seat tube. This one, it's 22, not 21, so I don't know. On the website they just say small, medium, large. And to be honest with you, their website was kind of lacking. It didn't have a lot of details. It just sort of said electric bikes, and then it had some pictures. And I couldn't actually click into those pictures to get more information. So I've been super thorough on my review, so that if you get this bike and you're trying to figure out what's the tire pressure rating, what's the length, how's the width on this bike, everything that I've recorded is for the medium size. And again, I love that not only do they have fender and rack bosses, but they also have bottle cage bosses, so you could put a folding lock or water bottle. And part of that's because we got this nice classic diamond frame. The drawback is going to be you really have to swing your leg up high to get over this thing. And if you're someone who has hip and knee issues, this is a sporty or kind of a younger person's bike is how I see it. Back to like no suspension, steel fork, a little bit of vibration dampening quality with that, steel handlebar. But if you scratch those, you could get a little bit more rust. I love that it's color matched. These are classic grips. They got a little bit of a rubber protector here too, so you don't get your knuckles worn up. And then that display. So I saved this for last because, it's pretty simple. We got the 5 levels of assist, 5 little battery readouts, but we don't have a speed, like how fast you're going, how far have you gone, is there a range estimator, is there a clock? None of that. You don't have any of the fancier stuff. You don't even have like a little USB charging port. So a lot of times I'll be riding in a new place with like my phone, like GPS, and it takes battery to do that. I can't plug into this and actually use that battery capacity for much more. And some of the Bafang batteries I've seen, they have USB plugs in the side of the pack. This one doesn't have any of that. It's just very, very simple. And the display is maybe a little tougher, and it's kind of stealthy. You turn this off at the bike rack and people might not even know it's electric, which is nice. But then you go out at night and these LEDs are pretty bright. I would consider putting some tape over them. You have to peel it back to check every once in a while. I guess you could come down here and check the battery capacity pretty easily like this. It's just, leaves something to be desired. But again, that's why you're paying less. So anyway, relatively easy to reach while you're riding. You basically just pedal this thing around and have a good time, hopefully, and don't have to worry about all the sensitive bits that some of the other more complex electric bikes have to deal with. No quick release, by the way. It's like actually, look, that one does have a quick release. That's so funny, because on the Monroe 250, it just had nuts. So I guess that's a 9mm quick release back there. And this looks like a 12mm threaded axle with nuts in the back. And there is a quick disconnect, so you can change the flat or swap tires if you want to. And again, these are 37, so 700 by 35C versus the Monroe 250 had 700 by 32C. So a little bit fatter, a little bit more comfort, just a little bit more stability. And 700C, it's like a 28-inch wheel, so it's very city-oriented, almost like a road bike kind of setup. Maybe we should get out there and actually take it for a test ride. Okay, so I'm in the highest level of assist. Just gonna give you a view. These disc brakes are working pretty well. Feels pretty stable. Let's try that again. It's a little bit more nimble because the tires are narrow, but it does have good rolling momentum here. So again, unfortunately, I can't tell how fast I'm going because there's no speedometer here, but I'm guessing it's about 15 miles per hour when the pedaling cadence starts to feel natural, a little bit faster. when you start out, especially if this was a hill, that's really slow, kind of difficult. So it's nice to have the extra motor power, nice to be able to click up and easily tell what assist level you're in. It's just a simple bike, class 1, 20 mile per hour top speed. Assisted, the disc brakes are feeling pretty good, but they're not going to give you adjustable reach like hydraulic or that same sort of stopping power. There's no branding on these. They're just generic, mechanical disc brakes. 160 millimeters is just kind of like, oh, okay, that's average. And then right here, you can see a mounting point. So if you did want to add a kickstand so you wouldn't have to lean this thing up against the wall all the time, that would be a possibility. Okay, guys, from here you should be able to see that chain ring, hear the motor, and just get some idea of, listen for when the motor activates, but watch for when I stop pedaling so you can get some idea of that delay I was talking about. I'm still going to ride in assist level 5. I'm going to go kind of fast. I'm going to do some braking and stuff. The noise might be a little bit amplified because the camera is connected to the frame right now, the seat post, but hope this helps. The Monroe 350 definitely feels smoother because I think the tires are a little bit lower tire pressure right now. They're rated up to 50 PSI versus the Monroe 250 had narrow tires and they were rated up to like 80 PSI, so much higher PSI, a bit more efficient, but just more jarring. So I like this one in terms of comfort. The motor power feels good, it's smooth, and it's pretty quiet. So not bad. The other interesting thing about it is because it's a cadence sensor, it doesn't matter how hard you push. So once you're up to speed, you just move the pedals a little bit. That motor's still going to give you full power at any time. It's kind of neat. I was thinking about it, and this bike reminds me of the Easy Motion Easy Go Race. Same thing, single speed, kind of a fun city, sporty looking bike, but it had a battery pack right here, which, that it's a little bit better to have a weight low in center. This battery capacity is definitely much higher, and that bike was a couple $100 less, but a little bit weaker in terms of the motor. So I feel like it's neat to see this part of the industry and maybe the space or this niche growing a little bit, so you have more than just one choice of a single speed like city bike. And I like it. There's definitely some compromises, like some of the components are a little basic on this, but you try to hit that lower price point, it's kind of what you end up with. Well, guys, I think that's it. That's the Monroe 350 from Schwinn. For the full write-up on this, including all the measurements and some extra pictures and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Chime in if you have any questions or feedback. Of course, have fun out there and ride safe.